seldom addressed, which indicted entire groups of African peoples, forming a spiritual caste system. This invisible yet ubiquitous system was the Abrahamic belief in the curse of Ham. The so-called curse is described as Ham, Noah's son, looking upon his father's nakedness, and then Noah awakening from his drunkenness, cursing Canaan, Ham's son, in retaliation. Noah says, "Cursed be Canaan, a slave of slaves shall he be to his brothers." This verse in the Jewish and Christian tradition has elicited much comment and speculation in the literature, with Africans freighted with the cost of medieval interpretation. However, historians William Evans and Edith Sander introduce a critical historical lens concerning the scripture, leading to what many scholars believe to be the true origins of Canaan's curse. Most scholars believe that the story of Noah's curse in its biblical form is a product of the kingdom of David and Solomon, and thus reflects the circumstance of the Hebrews in the 10th century BC. About 1200 BC, their nomadic ancestors from the eastern desert had invaded the land of Canaan, an invasion that coincided with one from the west by the Sea People, or Philistines. By the 10th century, the Canaanites, the presumed descendants of the individual upon whom the curse had fallen, had been conquered, and many of them had been annihilated or enslaved. Yet, it had become apparent that the victorious Hebrews would have to share the land and the Canaanites with those other conquerors, the Philistines, who thus become in myth the sons of Japheth, dwelling in the tents of Shem. The tradition provided a militarily successful people with religious sanction. In this context, the curse of Ham was really a justification for Canaanite subjugation by the Israelites. If this is the intended symbolic relationship according to most scholarship, how then did the curse of Ham come to be attributed to African people? The curse transitioned from Canaanites to Africans via the Babylonian Talmud, which is the primary text for Jewish law and moral life. Reference to the Hamitic curse can be found in early Judaic literature and clearly brings race, that is, blackness, to the forefront as the punishment levied on Ham's descendants. The Babylonian Talmud in 500 AD specifically identifies Africans as the target of Noah's curse and makes a note to highlight blackness as a consequence. It even delineates African phenotypes, such as kinky hair and full lips. This narrative, advanced by Jewish tradition, is quickly adopted by the Arabs and incorporated into Islamic literature. And as the Israelites used the curse to justify the enslavement and subjugation of the Canaanites, so too did the Arabs use the curse to justify the enslavement of Africans. Evidence of the acceptance of the Hamitic story can be found in the work of early Muslim scholars and from the fact that in Arabia the majority of slaves were black Ethiopians whose subjugation was justified because of their blackness and the negative cultural perceptions that blackness held for Arabs.
I ain't making this shit up, yo. What? Muhammad had sex. What? Hold on, yo. He was 54 and she was 9. It's in the Quran. Let's get the scriptures. Wow. Wow, that is a pedo, man. No bullshit. That's pedo activity, man. Straight pedo activity, man. They saying that. Wow, man. This is Sir John Hawkins, ladies and gentlemen. He had a slave ship called Jesus. Let's go find it. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, John Hawkins had a slave ship named Jesus, and it was blessed by the Pope. Yeah, that's the slave ship there, y'all. It's called Jesus. We're going to get to it. Most definitely going to get to it. But a slave ship called Jesus, and y'all out here, man, we've been due. Hold on. Queen Elizabeth. Queen Elizabeth sends the first slave ship in a what? Ship named Jesus. Ladies and gentlemen. Is she related to the other Queen Elizabeth?
That blackness held for Arabs. A source of traditional views that attributed skin color to the Hamitic curse may have derived from a body of hadith known as the Israeliyat, reports taken from Jewish sources in the Arabian Peninsula during the early period of Islam, thus explaining the incorporation of the account of the sons of Ham into Arab Islamic history. Incorporation of the account of the sons of Ham into Arab Islamic history. So the consensus founded on mainstream interpretation seems to posit that the curse of Ham originated as a justification for Canaanite subjugation. Then, for whatever reason, Jewish literature repurposed the original text to apply to African people. And then, Arabs found the Jewish tradition useful in their justification. The virulent appeal of Ham's curse did not stop amongst the Arabs in Islam. Christianity became the last bastion to actively enforce Noah's sanction of enslavement, and Afro-descended people, specifically in the Western world, were generationally impacted by that Semitic baggage. The curse of Ham was patently used in the Western world to justify the enslavement of African people. Indeed, American abolitionist Frederick Douglass noted that American slaveholders used the argument that God cursed Ham in order to excuse slavery. According to James Sweet, it was from the Islamic lands and from Iberia that these racial attitudes found their way into the Americas and were instrumental in the creation of American racism. Babylonian Talmud's insistence on a cursed African Ham created the intellectual backdrop for the later Islamic and Christian ideologies. It seems as though adherents of the Abrahamic religions manifested a code of justification for bad imperial behavior, a form of religious comfort to pacify the moral disquiet in their hearts. The curse of Ham has undoubtedly inflicted tremendous damage to the Afro-descendant community. Hopefully, by understanding its origin and its use, our community can find ways to mitigate any potential lingering effects.